Let's turn our attention now to the Republic of Niger, where uncertainty looms over that country as Nigerians wonder what the next line of action would be following the ECOWAS ultimatum that would elapse in less than an hour. But the Alumni Association of the Nigeria's National Institute of Policy and Strategic Studies is calling on the regional bloc to continually engage dialogue in resolving the impasse. Sifon Essien has more on this.
Uncertainty looms over a country of about 25 million people. Niger's junta refused to meet with emissaries sent by ECOWAS and Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu. There are indications the junta has sought the help from Russia's Wagner Group in anticipation of the use of force by ECOWAS following the end of a 7-day ultimatum to restore the democratically elected government.
Efforts to engage with all relevant stakeholders. Dialogue and negotiations should be at the forefront of our...
Sanctions by the regional bloc have seen costs to power supply from Nigeria to the landlocked country, among other penalties. But the junta is stuck to its guns. The Alumni Association of Nigeria's National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies calls for increased dialogue with the junta to resolve the impasse. In a statement, the association, which is an offshoot of one of the country's highest policy think tank, urges ECOWAS against the use of force. The group says, quote, military action by ECOWAS may escalate the current situation in a humanitarian crisis and worsen the security challenges in the West African sub-region. It may also escalate the tensions in the fragile security situation in the Lake Chad region and other parts of West Africa, attracting other armed groups and external actors to take advantage of it, end of quote. For now, it's unclear what ECOWAS' next line of action would be. Sifon Essien, TVC News, Abuja.
And as the clock ticks, thousands of supporters of the military coup in Niger gathered at a Niamey stadium on Sunday when a deadline set by the West African Regional Bloc, ECOWAS, to return to the deposed President Mohamed Bazoum to power is set to expire. A delegation of members of the now ruling National Council of the Safeguard of the Homeland arrived at the 30,000-seat stadium to cheers from supporters, many of whom carried Russian flags and portraits of CNSP leaders. The stadium, named after Seyni Kutuchi, who led Niger's first coup d'etat in 1974, was almost full and the atmosphere was festive. The demonstration coincides with the ultimatum set by ECOWAS on July the 30th for the coup leaders to reinstate Bazoum. But so far, the generals who seized power in Niamey late last month have shown no sign of willingness to give way. One of the CNSP leaders, General Mohamed Toumbe, in his speech denounced all opposition to the coup. He said, quote, they are lurking in the shadows and plotting subversion against the forward march of Niger. We are aware of their Machiavellian plan. End quote. And former Army spokesman, retired Brigadier General Sani Usman, joins me now live from our Abuja studio for more perspective on this. Good to have you on the news at this time, sir. So first off, how do you view the ongoing situation in Niger, where the West African leaders are threatening military action if the detained president isn't released and a democratic government reinstated?
Good evening, and thank you for having me on your program. The situation actually is quite dicey and quite unfortunate, and that is why the Alumni Association of the National Institute condemned on unequivocal terms the seizure of power by the military junta in Niger Republic and called for expedite action in restoration of democratic governance. And that's why the association endorsed fully the ECOWAS efforts at resolving the impasse. However, we caution against the use of military force because there are still avenues, of constructive engagement, between the ECOWAS and the military leaders in Niger Republic to restore democratic governance in that country, for the obvious reason that the average civilians on the street will be the worst off for it in case such actions are, taken.
And indeed, what are your thoughts on the ECOWAS approach to handling this crisis, considering its past involvement now in restoring order through military interventions in countries like Sierra Leone, Liberia, and Gambia rather. How could the support of these suspended countries like Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, for instance, and Guinea rather, for Niger's military government, impact the regional stability within ECOWAS?
There is no doubt about the leadership of Nigeria in the economic community of West African states, especially when it comes to military power, given the history and antecedents. And you have just mentioned instances of Liberia, Sierra Leone, and of course just of recent in the Gambia, when Yahya Jammeh refused to, leave. So basically, there is no doubt about the fact that Nigeria definitely is a force to be reckoned with, regardless of whatever support Niger Republic might get. But that should not be the case, in the sense that we are concerned about the devastating consequences of such military action on the civilians. And apart from that, all the countries you have mentioned, they are experiencing one form of security challenge or the other. Take, for instance, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger itself, and of course, if you look at the Lake Chad region, Nigeria, Niger, Cameroon, and Chad are experiencing security challenges. And remember, we have the concept of this war economy, in which some of these merchants will definitely take advantage of it and exacerbate the security challenges. We are not even talking about the humanitarian problems. And if you are also talking about the Nigerian context, there is a long-standing historical, socio-economic relationship between Nigeria and Niger Republic. So these relationships are being strained. So I think sanctions and constructive engagement will be better as against the use of military force, in solving the issue. And remember, this is not the first time Niger Republic has experienced military coup, and Nigeria played a leading role in resolving it, and I think this will not be any different.
Indeed, but what do you think, first off now, about the involvement of Western allies, especially the United States and France? How do you think this could influence what happens in Niger?
That is exactly what we're saying. And I think, the issue of when two elephants fight the grasshopper, even though late Malemo Julius Nyerere has a different view even about that. But that notwithstanding, that is why we don't want the escalation of the conflicts to involve, other, interest groups, because nobody can solve African problem other than the Africans themselves, just like nobody will solve Nigeria's problem other than Nigerians themselves. So basically, if we imbibe the spirit of constructive engagement, and thankfully, I think the ECOWAS, particularly being led by Nigeria, is trading that line, and that is why we wanted to continue, because there is still, light at the end of the tunnel. If they continue with the diplomatic shuttles and the sanctions and other measures other than military, engagement, I believe the problem will be solved in no distant time.
I share your optimism, but comparing the current situation in Niger to past instances of political instability and, of course, military interventions in West Africa, what insights can we gain from history?
Well, basically, that's what we're saying. The political instability and all the rest of the thing, yes, beyond what we have in Niger, there are also issues of addressing some of the root causes of this, insistent coup d'etat in some parts of the West African sub-region. And some of them, to a large extent, borders on good and the issue of good governance and, effective, or rather, justice and effective distribution of scarce resources. And if you look at it, the level of the relationship between some of these countries that are contiguous with each other. Just recently, Nigeria decide to withdraw, petroleum products subsidy, and it has corresponding effect or rather consequences on some of our neighboring states. So these are the issues that we have to take into considerations. So it is not those people that are, in the position of leadership, they hardly feel it, except the issue of luxury and privileges. But the man on the street or the woman on the street will definitely feel it in the sense that there's so much, deprivation and high cost of living and what have you. So that will exert pressure, and it will lead to certain consequences that are not, foreseen.
All right, and let's leave it at that. Thank you so much, Sani Usman, for your insights on the news at this time.
Thank you so much for having me.